Hello. Just wanted to bring you on a little walking tour of another place that I go for relaxation, and it looks like they're having a little event here today, so I'm not sure what it's about. I think it was some kind of history lesson. I'm trying to find the entrance to the fence here, but oh, looks like they closed that off. I'm going to step over this here and head down this way. I had some topics I wanted to cover on non-reaction, which I think is a very important subject to try and cover. Turn around to take a view of this beautiful park right here. Most of the time this park is empty. It's like a lot of people don't get out these days and enjoy what's here unless there's an event going on, speaking event or something like that. 99.9% of the time I'm here, it's just a couple people walking their dogs. And you can see some of the benches need some work. I get some volunteers out here to help put these things back together. Maybe I'll do that someday myself. But anyway, here's another beautiful view right here. So we wanted to talk about non-reaction. Non-reaction. I think that's one of the biggest lessons that we can learn in life, is to be non-reactory. To kind of, no matter what's happening in our lives, no matter how tough it can be, even in the most extreme cases of being abused or targeted in some way. The important thing is to go learn how to go within and find your inner strength. Find that connection with Source or God or whatever you want to call it, the universe. Afternoon. And when you make that connection, you can feel a little bit more confident and not confident, but you will feel less aggressive when responding to negative situations or adversity. It becomes a challenge. It's a great challenge, but one that we must master, I believe, in order to be happy in this life, to be happy and confident and just one with everything around us. And one of the coping mechanisms that I use is getting out in nature, getting around the water. Water has so much memory. It has so much of God's love in it, I believe. And the reason for that is, think about how water permeates everything. It permeates our bodies. We're made mostly of water. The planet is made mostly of water. And it's all connected. It's not a separate thing, you know. If you look at life that way, you look at everything from the macro perspective and from the micro perspective, it's all really the same kind of physics that we see, until we get into the really micro levels where we're dealing with quantum theory, which we can't explain, which helps us to explain more the oneness of that exists on this planet, how everything is connected, and how some things are just not predictable in physics. So we'll be posting more about that kind of stuff on our site at some point. The science behind the idea of oneness, which is one of the things that I really am dying to dig into, to understand more myself about how all that works. But to stay on today's topic of non-reaction, you have to ask yourself, or I ask myself every day, whenever I'm getting upset about something, or if I'm mad in traffic, or I'm getting impatient, or something's coming at me with work, too much is coming at me, whatever, you get frustrated and you realize, well, that doesn't help anything, doesn't make the situation go away, doesn't make it better. So learning to take a step back in that moment and ask yourself, what is it that's really triggering me? Oftentimes it's not even the very thing in front of you that's triggering you. It might be emotions that you have bottled up from the past, things that you haven't addressed in your own life. Self-forgiveness might be an issue. Forgiveness of others might be an issue. If we tend to hold a very reactory mindset, meaning, the littlest things will trip us off, we have to look at anger as a form of insecurity. It's a form of fear. How much battery I have? I think I'm doing pretty good on battery. I got half. For some reason, the battery's getting low pretty quick here. But anyway, yeah. If your pattern is that of strong reaction every time, then you got to ask yourself, where does that come from? And is there something that I need to resolve within myself to change that pattern? Because oftentimes those patterns, when we're always being reactory and other people witness this, they're feeling your energy, they're feeling the energy of the things that you carry, and it can actually repel those that would otherwise want to be more associative with you or more engaged with you. And a lot of times the empath, being so sensitive, can cause that kind of an issue. So we'll continue this in a second here, not to bother these folks. Hey there, what's going on?
Come here. Come here. Hey.
How you doing?
How you doing?
Good. So I don't know if I want to go this way. I think I'll go this way first, see what we can see this way. This is another little walking path that's usually a little bit overgrown in the summer. Now it's fall, it's a little bit clearer, I believe. Less bugs and insects, which is nice. Still be able to see the water here. So anyway, yeah, so looking within, figuring out what it is that is still lingering there and causing that little bit of a constant cycle of reaction is very helpful for bringing out more happiness and peace in your life. When you realize that you don't need to rely on anybody else for your support. You don't need to rely on anybody else for your, emotionally, physically, everything, when you can get to that point where you realize the opinions of others, it doesn't matter, that we're only doing our best. We're all doing our best here to seek improvement, to find more love, to share more love, to be more of service to others on this planet, and to try to understand the negative aspects that exist here are for our learning purposes, no matter how horrible they are. The things that we go through, oftentimes I believe we agreed to go through those. That's just my own personal belief. I just have this feeling, this sort of inner knowing for my own purposes, that all the bad that I've been through in life was there to teach me something, and it surely has. Now it can be there to teach you something, or it can be there to destroy you, right? It's all in your own free will, whether you're seeking solutions in your life or you're just sort of going through the motions, dependent on external factors to bring you happiness. We all do that to some extent. We want to, be connected with others. We want to be, You know, there's nothing wrong with having help and helping each other and loving each other. But ultimately, the work comes down to your own inner work, those things that need to be resolved within ourselves. And there's a lot of energy coming in from me looking at the science behind what the solar system cycle is doing right now, and some of the things that people are saying and experiencing about these energetic waves coming in from not just the center of the galaxy, but also from our sun, causing heightened emotion. You know, some people who are in the more positive mindset, they're saying, are getting a little more positive. Some are that are stuck in the middle or still on the fence, flip-flopping back and forth, and the ones who are negative are really having a hard time with this energetic wave coming in. It's kind of like the full moon cycle. When people feel that full moon, you know, I don't think anyone can disagree with what happens during a full moon and how the full moon does affect people. I've talked to police officers. My stepfather was also a police officer. He would always tell me, oh, it's a full moon, you know, it's time it's time to deal with the cuckoos, is what he would say. And it's always the same people every time. It's always the same calls. It's like, you know, so you know there's an effect. There's an effect out there for the positive or the negative that is measurable. So it's something to keep in mind with all these cycles that exist in our universe and our solar system and our moon cycles and all of that. They do have an effect on us mentally. Apparently that's part of what people are saying is part of the ascension on the planet too. Why more people are seeking truth. They're seeking they're seeing through a lot of the propaganda that's being put out in the media, and things that are obviously not true. That's only becoming obvious because of the collective consciousness is rising. What do I mean by collective consciousness? Well, there's a lot of research out there that has to do with proving the fact that there is this collective consciousness that we all tap into. Some people call it the Akashic Record, some people call it the source field or God or whatever you want to call it. And this is so for one example, to get the difference between the idea of our brains being this physical thing and our consciousness. We oftentimes think that our consciousness lives within our brain. It doesn't really live within our brain. It actually is existing outside of our brain as part of the collective consciousness that we tie into. So, and the examples that science is given on that, or through anecdotal evidence, which is sometimes better than actual scientific controlled studies, if you will, because controlled studies are controlled, and they're controlled for a reason. There's certain information that they don't want people to know about. I believe they want to dumb us down a little bit in certain areas, to keep control over the population. Not in a horribly nefarious way, but just, you know, I think people are afraid to know the truth of their own power sometimes, and so they don't go there. They don't talk about these subjects very often. But I knew a person who was in a coma for I think 2 years, and they thought they were, you know, pretty much no activity in the brain. They weren't sure if they were going to ever come out of this coma. There wasn't much going on. There was no movement, no visual cues, nothing. No activity on the brain that would indicate that they were thinking about anything, or that they were able to, you know, even be using their hippocampus or something to memorize or pull information back and forth from the brain. So, cases like this, when the person did finally wake up from the coma, which they did, and to be honest with you, brain fully functioning, everything's fine. During that time, though, they had remembered conversations of things that people had going on in the you know, in the bed, in the room that they were in, or even outside the room. It's almost like they at times were outside their body. And there's so many stories like this, not just this one. And I'm not sure I'm getting this particular story 100% correct, because I've read so many different stories about people being in comas and almost dead, or even declared dead, that they had passed on and they had left their bodies and gone outside their bodies and able to hear conversations, and then when they came back into their body later on, they were able to repeat the entire conversation. So that's how you know that we tie into this. There's a global consciousness, or a global, we have this ability outside of our brain to maintain memory. So the fact that we can do that tells us that we can do that while we're alive, while we're conscious as well. So that's really how our brain works, is more as an antenna, a receiving tool, if you will. And of course, it's a physical, three-dimensional construct. So if you do have brain damage, it makes it hard to function, but it doesn't mean our consciousness isn't functioning, that we're not getting the whole thing. Or, people with conditions like, I don't know, that would, any condition that's physical where it makes it difficult to communicate using your brain, doesn't mean that they're not intelligent people, because our intelligence, I believe, lives outside of our brain. So when you can tap into the truth of that, your experiences on this three-dimensional plane, where we have these abuses, we have these terrible traumas that happen to people, we have to heal those traumas. We have to get past all of that. We need to seek more directly within ourselves for the peace, rather than looking without and expecting something to come along and save us. We are the only ones that can save us from the things that have happened. And to forgive those who are perpetrators, to forgive those who are horrible people, or which we consider to be horrible people. There are some not so great things going on the planet. But the more and more you see of this stuff being reported online in different places, I think that encourages us to share even more, to bring more of it out. The more that we bring out, the more truth is exposed, the more that the good can win out in the end. But in order, between now and then, how do we maintain our positivity? Through non-reaction, through not reacting to what goes on around us in a negative way. We could say, all this human trafficking, this pedophilia, all this bad stuff that goes on out there, and it's horrible, and it is absolutely horrible, and it can really get to you, especially if you've had that personal experience yourself. But we have to remember to keep our vibe high in order to heal others and help others heal as well. Is to lift people up, is to bring them out of that, because we don't want we don't want the damage to continue. We don't want the abuse to continue, because that's what an abuser wants. The abuser wants to make a person a victim for the rest of their lives. And we have a choice after that, and this is our challenge. I believe this is our challenge that we all need to face. We all need to look at, how can we heal? How can we forgive? Forgive doesn't mean to forget. It doesn't mean that we don't want justice for what happened. It means that we peacefully go after that justice, and we can still hold that conviction in wanting those things without holding anger, without holding hatred, without holding, we must have an eye for an eye mentality. We need to bring it down. We do, all of us as a collective. And I believe that's what we're all seeing happening around the world right now. If you're paying attention to alternative media, and you're not watching the mainstream news all the time, where you can kind of break out of the box of what they want us to know, because all that is controlled on both sides of the coin, as far as, if you're looking at it from the political aspects, conservative versus liberal versus centrist, whatever, it's all of the mainstream media is somewhat controlled. So we need to break out of that and even be non-reactory to what we see in the news, so that we can seek more information, seek a little bit of different avenues of gaining that information. There's a lot of places that I'm sharing on my group that I believe have truth in it. I believe even with that, we need to have our discernment hats on, because even they can get misinformation. So we have to just go with what resonates in our hearts, do the healing, do the inner work, find your connections with Source, and just remember, as you're growing, you're going to have more things thrown at you, more challenges thrown at you. That's just part of the way that it works, I believe, until we ascend as a collective far enough where we don't have to deal with those kinds of things anymore. But anyway, I hope that helps a little bit, and the idea of the fact that we are all one, that we're all trying to get through this ascension together, and to focus on non-reaction and focus more on love, and love of ourselves, forgiveness of others, so that we can all move ahead happily and actually accomplish something positive while we're alive here on this planet. So I believe a lot of us came here for that purpose, to come and help others, like a lot of the empaths and the intuitive people that are part of our site, part of our group, are here to start planting seeds. And I think we're a little bit further along than planting seeds, because a lot of this stuff is taking now finally. But anyway, so that's the hope, that we just keep sharing, keep doing our work, and keep moving ahead. Well, I hope that's somewhat inspiring, and hope it helps you to see that in your own life, in order to gain happiness, you need to seek a non-reactory style, do the healing, go within, get out in nature, and connect with God and Source, and the rest will be easier. Well, have a great day, and I'm signing off, and we'll talk to you again. All right, there we go. Flooding the bogs over here on the right. This is cranberry bogs over here in Massachusetts. There's a guy on a tractor coming up this way. He's scooping up all the cranberries and doing his job right there. It's pretty nifty, actually. That's pretty freaking great, huh? Beautiful day here, and an interesting process. I don't know how much you can see in there. It's as far in as I can get zoomed with this camera, but looks like he's coming along there. It's a slow process. Flood the bog so the cranberries float to the top, and then they come around and they scoop them, I guess, or maybe he's just mixing it up so that they float to the top. Not quite sure. It's pretty cool. Down the blades, turning it up there. You see how that works? All the blades spin and kind of break up the berries a little bit from the plant, and allow them to float to the top, so that later on they can come by and scoop all these up. So that's a ton of work going back and forth, but that's how it works, folks. Just thought I'd stop and share that with you. Thought that was looking pretty neat. We'll talk to you later.